Hello YouTube, this is Hurlu Guru and I am a Lemurian Lightworker interested in psychology and how the universe and human mind and soul work. Thus, tonight I will invite in quite interesting subject that may subject personally how I think that lightworkers and empaths cannot be really neurotypical. I know the controversial term neurotypical because the context is by some kind of pejorative or discriminatory meaning that tells you I hate normies, and that there is some kind of dualistic or separatist intention behind it, which was a word that was used in wrong ways. Well, say wrong ways because there was hate put on it, and just like any word can become discriminatory, like narcissist or like narcissist, it just at that point, it just passed over that point, it just passed the taboo point. But neurotypical did that also, but a bit in the same years that narcissists became really a trend. Sorry, I have the hiccups now. Trend word. And my reason for believing so that we cannot be neurotypical is that when you're neurotypical, you also have a component of spiritual ignorance. Like you're fully 3D when you're completely neurotypical. You're fully into 3D consciousness. You have a you have duality. Like there isn't as much as intuition or spiritual power as a light worker, and that's one of the two main criteria for me for someone's truly neurotypical per se. Some people call it neurosocials, and it's kind of right, but in some way that they will easily copy others because neurotypicals, because the spiritual low low aspect, they have trouble thinking for themselves very often, and they might easily give in into what others do and copy them, and it makes them hard for them to know who they truly are, very much so, or they believe so. And because they're the majority of humanity right now, they're kind of seeing themselves die off a little. Like they feel as though they're on top of the world and genetic normalcy, but there's no genetic normalcy. And there's some like when you use the term awake neurotypical, it's mean a neurotypical that knows it's impossible to be normal, that's a little more aware than your average neurotypical, which is pretty much a double word. And because neurotypicals aren't really spiritually aware, and that they're by default almost zombie-like, or even really zombie-like, where they have very limited potential to fully evolve transcendentally. It might take them lifetimes and lifetimes, and they don't have necessarily the awakened aspect of genetics that light workers have. And light workers often think so differently and much more diversified in their holographic and spiritual profile that they become outcasts. They can't really think like the norm, or they can be very resistant to what neurosocials try to learn to them, to their culture by default tries to learn to their heads from early childhood: fear, respect your mother, religion, etc., etc. And because of this zombie aspect of neurosocials, and also you have your brains are pre-wired because for social functioning, and they have this magic inside of them that modifies their physicality, and this magic can also like impact. It's sort of like people with dissociative identities, like their how the blood pressure might even change according to person. Like for example, they have a child with heartbeat goes up. Neurotypicals have the same thing, but for the person they try to chameleon themselves with, it can even change your pure chemistry. Like I've seen a lot of neurotypicals who have become the social programming that was put into their heads so much that they physically become these stereotypical programming archetypes, and they're almost everywhere. So yeah, so I must say that light workers cannot be neurotypical because there isn't the spiritual zombies aspect inside of them, even though they might be in darkness, misled for a very long periods in their life, they know it's not who they are. It's not what they signed up for. It's not part of their soul to be neurotypical, because when you're neurotypical, you're also holotypical, which means spiritually generally unaware and easily led into copying others, etc. Like I said, I already repeat myself, but it's because yeah, well, that's what I personally believe, that there is a reason why light workers cannot be neurotypical, and because sometimes they have different social skills, they have more awake conscious of what people how people think see right through them. So for neurosocials, they may misdiagnose them because you have this sort of collective intelligence that labels everything. And yeah, I might overgeneralize, but that's just for explanation's sake. Not every neurotypical is like that, but that's pretty much more of a minority. That's more weight to this. And yeah, so in sake of going to a more awakened world, neurotypicals will cease to be even a concept, because so many people will be awake that we will see pass through all the diagnoses and illusions that are placed onto most people's minds. It can be anyone, just anyone, and that's pretty much the resume of my opinions on the neuroatypicality of light workers. So I might end this there, opening for any questions, and feel free to try to disprove me. Like I said, I always appreciate good debates, and voila. So that's my opinion. Like, my videos are not necessarily for answering you, but simply speculating other extra questions that I pose myself. And what a few questions I have is, what is normal? Like, is the setting a drawing machine? For me, it's another 3D illusion. What is a light worker? What do you think is a light worker personally? And how did you cope with NTs or NS people if you're a light worker? And if you're neurosocial, how do you cope with light workers? Do you even know they could exist? What do you think? What is your opinion on spirituality? Like, blah blah blah. And that's interesting. So yeah, here's the catch of